Did you know that there was once a city that toggled between the embraces of gold and silver, only to be swallowed by the dust? It ended up as a buried secret beneath the sands of destiny, and its name, which we pronounce today, is nothing but an echo of a terrible punishment carried out by a serpent. What secret lies behind this arid land that was once the beacon of the universe? Welcome to our mysterious journey today. I am Dodi, and together we will uncover the hidden depths of history and the secrets of the past. Welcome to the Dodi drama world, where every story is a doorway to another realm. Join our growing family now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to be the first to experience the magic of our tales. Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, the prophet, king, sat on his magnificent throne, surrounded by the wind, the jinn, and the birds, a kingdom the likes of which was never given to anyone after him. Every day, the birds would parade before him in rows in the sky, like a flying army, glorifying God. But on that day, he saw something strange, a void in the sky, a blank spot amidst the flocks of birds. Solomon smiled, then raised his head and said with a calm, prophetic majesty, "Who among you knows the secret of this void?" The birds remained silent. Then the dove approached and said, "O prophet of God, this is the place of the crow, but he has been absent from us for days." Solomon, peace be upon him, raised his hand and ordered, "Bring me the crow." By the king's command, one of the birds flew to the horizon until it returned after a while with the crow. His features were pale, his feathers dirty, and exhaustion had overcome him. The crow approached with slow steps, then knelt with his wings in respect. Solomon, peace be upon him, said in an awe-inspiring voice, "O crow, why were you not among the birds in the parade? Are you one of the disobedient?" The crow raised his head, his eyes glistening with sadness, and said, "O prophet of God, I have an excuse. Nothing prevented me but mercy." Solomon approached and said, "And what is your excuse, O crow?" The crow sighed and said in a voice dripping with sadness, "I have an aged father who has reached 500 years of age. His feathers have fallen, his wings have weakened, and he can no longer fly. Whenever the birds went out, I covered him with my wings so the eagles would not see him and devour him. I could not leave him alone. That is why I missed your procession, O prophet of God." Solomon looked at him with surprised eyes filled with admiration and said, "Bring his father, so we may see if he is among the truthful." After moments, the jinn brought the old crow and placed him before Solomon. It was a moving scene, a weak body, falling feathers, and eyes that could barely see. Solomon, peace be upon him, fell silent, then approached him and asked with amazing gentleness, "O elder crow, what is the strangest thing you have seen in your long life?" The crow raised his head with difficulty and said in a broken voice, "O prophet of God, I have seen wonders in this land, but the strangest of them is what I witnessed in my youth. I saw a city unlike any other. Its walls were of gold, its doors were of gold, and even the dust beneath it shone as if it were light." He was silent for a moment, as if his memory were traveling through the centuries. Then he continued, "I landed that day on one of its walls, and its people saw me and honored me with a camel's portion of meat. I ate from it, along with the birds of prey. Then I left. Years passed until the drought came, and everyone in the sky and the earth went hungry. I remembered that city and said to myself, I shall return to it. Perhaps I will find sustenance from them. But when I arrived, I found the wonder, the city itself, but everything in it had become silver." Solomon fell silent, and signs of contemplation appeared on his face as the elder crow continued his story. "I landed on its wall, and they honored me with a sheep this time. I ate from it, then moved on. Years passed until a day came when I said, I will return once more to that city. But when I arrived, I saw it had turned into dust. The gold became dust, and the palaces collapsed. I landed on the same wall, but no one spoke to me, and no one gave me anything. It was a silent desert with no life in it. It was the strangest thing I have seen in my long life. Solomon remained silent, looking at the crow with eyes filled with astonishment, then said to him, Do you know the location of that city today? The elder crow said, Yes, O prophet of God, its ruins are still in a place far from civilization. Then Solomon ordered the wind, saying, Carry us there. In an instant, the carpet moved, the wind rose, and Solomon and those with him traveled through the sky, surrounded by clouds and pierced by sunbeams. The old crow was sitting at Solomon's feet, guiding them with his finger to a destination no one knew. After a long distance, the crow said in a trembling voice, Here it is, O prophet of God. That land is before us. Solomon looked down and saw nothing but arid land and silent sands extending to the horizon. He said, amazed, Is this it? I see no city or wall. The crow said with sad confidence, It was here, O prophet of God. By God, it was here. Solomon ordered the wind to move the sands. The storms unleashed, tearing through the silence, and dust flew across the horizon until the features of half demolished, buried walls appeared. Solomon stood on the carpet, looking at them with admiration and astonishment. It was truly a great city. Then he raised his head and said, Search for me for any living creature here, any trace of its remains. The jinn spread out in every direction, penetrating the earth and digging up the walls, while the wind circled in the sky, searching for a sign of life. After a while, one of them returned and said, We found a living creature in the city's well, a huge serpent. Solomon said, Bring her to me. After moments, the serpent appeared, black in color, her eyes glistening like embers and her fangs long like swords. She stood before Solomon, coiling her body around herself, while her breath made a terrifying sound. Solomon, peace be upon him, said to her in an awe-inspiring, dignified voice, Who are you? The serpent said, My name is Siyah. Solomon said, Do you know what happened to this city? Where did its people go? The serpent fell silent, then said in a broken voice, as if it were coming from the depths of the earth, I will not answer you until you give me the covenant and pledge of God that you will not harm me. Solomon looked at her deeply and said, You have the covenant and pledge of God that no harm will befall you, as long as you do not violate the law of God. Then the serpent raised her head and said, O prophet of God, this city was one of the richest cities on earth. God blessed them with gold, water, and abundant good, but they became arrogant and transgressed in the land and worshipped what is other than God. God wanted to remind them of his grace, so he reduced their provision. Perhaps they would return, but they grew only more stubborn and arrogant. She was silent for a moment, then continued in a faint voice. So God sent me as a punishment for them. I used to breathe my venom into their well water every day until they all drank from it, and they died one after another. And I remained here, a witness to the end of a city that did not know gratitude. A terrifying silence prevailed. Even the birds stopped flying. As for the elder crow, he lowered his head in fear. Solomon remained looking at her for a long time, then said, O Siyah, you have done a great deed, but God is more knowledgeable in his wisdom. Then he ordered the jinn, saying, Rebuild this city as it was, to be a lesson for those who come after them. The jinn set to work. The walls rose again. and the gold shone under the sunlight as if the city had returned to life after a long death. Solomon stood at its gate, contemplating it, with the crow by his side, and the wind fell silent in respect for that majestic scene. But the serpent was still watching him from afar, her body writhing as if she felt the danger coming. Solomon approached her and said, "O Siyah, your covenant has ended." The serpent trembled and said in a sharp voice, "O prophet of God, did you not give me the covenant and pledge of God that you would not harm me?" Solomon smiled and said, "Yes, but I said, as long as you do not violate the law of God, and you did not kill one man, you killed an entire nation." The jinn began to surround her, and the wind circled in the sky as if preparing for judgment. The serpent cried out with a booming voice, "But God is the one who sent me." Solomon, peace be upon him, said with terrible steadfastness, "God does not wrong anyone, but every soul is held accountable for what it has done. You may have been a punishment for them, but you exceeded the limit." With the end of his words, the wind stopped suddenly, the sky ignited with a red color, and the moment of reckoning began. The sky went still for a moment, as if the earth were holding its breath in anticipation of what would happen. The jinn's eyes stared at the serpent, and the birds above their heads fluttered in fear and silence. As for Solomon, peace be upon him, he remained standing, his clothes swaying with a light breeze, and his gaze fixed on that creature that combined treachery and destiny. He raised his hand, and the wind obeyed his command. It began to spin around the serpent like a small tornado coiling around her, but she was not dead yet. She was screaming in a voice like thunder, moaning and crawling, trying to escape. She said in a voice filled with awe, "O prophet of God, grant me a moment. I will tell you something no one has told you before." Solomon gestured with his hand. The wind stopped, and silence prevailed. He said to her, "Speak." She raised her head, her eyes glowing with a strange color, and said, "I was nothing but a tool in a destiny greater than me. This city did not die because of my venom alone, but because of their hearts that died before their bodies. I used to see them every day worshiping gold instead of the Lord of Gold, building palaces, and oppressing the weak. I used to hear the screams of children being snatched from the homes of the poor to serve the rich. Even the earth itself was groaning from their oppression." The serpent fell silent, then said in a voice rasped by pain, "When I blew the venom into the well, I did not cry until I saw a little girl dying while holding her mother's hand. At that moment, I knew that I had become like them, cruel without mercy." Solomon, peace be upon him, closed his eyes for a moment as if mercy had touched his heart, then said, "O Siyah, God does not wrong anyone, but he delays and does not neglect. Every creature is responsible for its actions, even if it is commanded." Then he gestured with his hand, and the serpent rose into the air amidst a whirlwind of wind. Everyone heard a majestic sound as her body fell to the ground, still and motionless. Solomon approached and looked at her long fangs that shone like gold. He said calmly, "These fangs will be a lesson for everyone who passes by here." Then he ordered the jinn to hang them on the gate of the city, and they did, and the fangs hung from the gate as a symbol of eternal punishment. After everything calmed down, Solomon sat on a rock at the entrance to the city with the crow by his side. The crow was watching the horizon in long silence. Solomon said in a deep voice, "O crow, you have seen with your own eyes what happened. What did you learn from this journey of yours?" The crow replied in a voice filled with sadness, "I learned, O prophet of God, that mercy is greater than power, and that whoever forgets gratitude is deprived of grace." Solomon smiled a little and said, "A fine lesson, O crow." Then he rose and ordered the jinn to leave. The carpet moved in the sky, and the golden city shone under the sunset rays as if it were bidding farewell to the sun for the last time. But the story did not end there. That night, while Solomon was sleeping in his palace, he saw in a dream a new city being built on the ruins of the old one. A city inhabited by people who worship God, live in justice, and are grateful for the grace. Then he saw those fangs hanging on the door turn into a white light that illuminated the earth. Solomon woke up feeling that there was a sign in the matter. In the morning, he gathered his wise men and said to them, "God does not send punishment in vain, and does not show signs without wisdom. We must preserve the story of this city to be a memory that is never forgotten." Since that day, jinn and humans have told the story of the city that God transformed through the venom of a tyrannical serpent, and the story of the prophet who rebuilt it to be a lesson. Centuries passed, people changed, and names changed. But the fangs hanging on the gate remained, defying time. Everyone who passed by there would ask, "Whose are these great fangs?" And it would be said to him, "They are the fangs of a serpent named Siyah." With the passage of time, people shortened the name and said, "Fangs of Siyah." Then they started saying it in a hurry, Nablusiyah. Then the two words blended until it became the word that history knows today, Nablusiyah. Thus, the name of a new city was born from the ashes of a city that perished, so that the story remains a witness that arrogance does not save and only gratitude lifts. But there is another secret that has not been revealed yet. Years after the death of Solomon, peace be upon him, a student of knowledge was wandering among the ruins of the city. He approached the old well and heard a faint sound coming from its depths. He leaned in and listened, and lo, a sound like a whisper saying, "No grace lasts for those who forget the giver." The student trembled and ran away quickly, and that sound continued to echo in his ears throughout his life. As for the city, the sands covered it again until it became a memory of the past. But people continued to talk about it from generation to generation, each telling it in his own way until it became a legend passed down by people all over the earth. Some say that the wind still passes over its location on moonlit nights, and you hear a faint moan in it as if it were crying. Others say that when birds pass through that place, they leave a void in their ranks, exactly as the crow did at the beginning of the story, because they still remember what happened there. In one of the journeys, after hundreds of years, a strange man passed from that land. He was carrying an old map in his hands with "City of Gold, Silver, and Dust" written on it. He searched a lot until he arrived where there was nothing but sand. He sat searching the earth with his hands until his fingers hit something solid. He pulled it out, and it was a huge golden Fang. He held it in astonishment, then raised it toward the sun, and the light reflected on his face like a flash. He smiled and said, "Perhaps the story has not ended yet." Then he walked away, leaving the sands to cover his trail just as they covered the trail of the city thousands of years ago. Thus remains the story of Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, the crow, the cursed city, and the serpent Siyah. An eternal lesson through time, reminding us that power without mercy leads to ruin, and that mercy without justice may open the door to chaos. But when justice and mercy meet, cities are built anew, sins are forgiven, and immortal stories are written. So, you who hear this story today, remember that life, no matter how long, will end, and that God, if He gives, is able to take in a single moment. This is the law of life and the law of God in His creation. Nations follow one another, kingdoms disappear, and divine justice remains standing, unchanging. Thus the story ends, but the lesson from it begins now. How many cities today resemble the one that transgressed? And how many hearts are filled with gold and have forgotten their Creator? Perhaps there is no longer a serpent breathing venom, but tyranny still lives in the souls of humans, waiting only for the moment of the final fall. So, he who considers survives, and he who is arrogant perishes. Glory be to him whose kingdom does not cease, and whose law does not change. Thank you for watching today's tale on Dodi Drama. I hope this story touched your hearts and enlightened your minds. Always remember to carry the lesson within your hearts. If you loved this world, join our growing family. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so we can continue this magical journey together.